every year, there is a quarterback who jumps off the page, who takes an enormous leap, not just a newsletter I would love for you to subscribe to, on the field. Could Jordan Love be that quarterback this season? Plus, why the Packers might be calling more plays they know won't work this season, all in search of greater opportunity down the road. We explain on today's show.
You are Locked On Packers, your daily Green Bay Packers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Packers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Peter Bukowski, and I cover the Packers for The Leap, a newsletter I would love for you to subscribe to. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter, Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you find podcasts, you'll find Locked On Packers, the number one Packers podcast on the internet, and the show for fans who know what happened. They want to know why and how. Thanks to everyone who makes Locked On Packers their first listen every day. We hope you like starting your day with us as much as we like starting our day with you. Seemingly every year, there is a quarterback who takes an unexpected jump, who looked bad, potentially, varying levels of bad. Someone just like, man, looked meh. There was a great piece in Consumer Sports about this. Going back to 2017, Jared Goff took a huge jump in the Sean McVay era. Went from this guy might just stink to, hey, look, this guy's pretty good in the right situation. We saw in Detroit again, in the right situation, pretty good. Patrick Mahomes from year 1 to year 2 played one game and then became the MVP of the league, lit the world on fire. Lamar Jackson in 2019 went from, hey, this is interesting, to I'm the MVP of the league. Josh Allen went from, I don't know about this, like a lot of talent, but like this guy cannot stop making mistakes, to, oh, he's one of the 3 or 4 or 5 best quarterbacks in football. Joe Burrow in 2021. And you could make the case, we knew Joe Burrow, that rookie season, was going to be good. We just didn't know he was going to be this good. 2022, Trevor Lawrence went from, wait, is this your king? To, Pro Bowl caliber player. And then Jalen Hurts went from, okay, this is interesting, to MVP kind of candidate. And Sumer put together a list of players who could potentially be that guy this season. And Jordan Love is on the list. Here's something that I just think is interesting, okay? Of the guys on the list, there are 7 guys on the list. Only 3 had a positive total EPA last year, estimated points added. So only 3 of those 7 actually created a positive value for their teams last year. Kenny Pickett, Sam Howell, Jordan Love. Kenny Pickett started more than half the season for the Steelers. Sam Howell started a few games for Washington. Jordan Love started 0 games for the Green Bay Packers. And yet Jordan Love created more total EPA than Justin Fields last season in 15 starts, because Justin Fields can't stop fumbling, can't stop throwing interceptions, and is an inaccurate quarterback, creates a lot of problems in the pocket. Created more total EPA than Trey Lance, who started a game. Now, got hurt in a monsoon, but Trey Lance, EPA numbers are bad for him. And Desmond Ridder, who had multiple starts late in the season for Atlanta. And the guys who were big Ridder fans, you will be shocked to hear this. The people who were big Desmond Ridder fans in the draft saw a lot they liked out of Desmond Ridder in the last few games when he was actually able to play in Atlanta. And then you put in Jordan Love, and then Mac Jones is in here too. Mac Jones, offensive coordinator nightmare, Now they have Bill O'Brien, DeAndre Hopkins in for a visit. By the time you listen to this, DeAndre Hopkins might already be a New England Patriot, back playing for Bill O'Brien, the coach who traded him the first time in Houston. I bring this up because I look at this list and I go, first of all, I think Jordan Love is one of the most talented players on this list. He's certainly more talented than Ritter, the Ritter, Howell, Pickett, Mack tier. He's more talented than those guys. So that's not enough, but it is important, and I think it's worth mentioning. I think he has the best offensive line on this list, with the possible exception of Atlanta. Like, Atlanta has a pretty good offensive line. Now, skill talent, I think you could make the case that the Packers have the second worst group on this list. That only the Patriots have a worse skill group than the Packers. The Bears, they get DJ Moore. We know the 49ers. But here's the thing. I'm disqualifying Trey Lance for the moment because he couldn't even beat out Brock Purdy. Like, even before we knew whether or not Brock Purdy was going to be back this year, the 49ers were like, nah, he's the guy over Trey Lance. So I can't buy into that. Mac Jones is playing in an offense that lacks skill talent. They lost their best receiver over the offseason. Bill O'Brien back in 1 year of the system, basically, zero for most of the guys on this team. It's not like, you're bringing back all these players. It's not like the Packers bringing back Joe Philbin at the end of the McCarthy era or something. Like, that's not what this is. I don't find that to be plausible. He's going to break out given the weapons that he has in the division that he plays in. Kenny Pickett is an interesting one. He actually played really well in the second half of last season. I think that there is certainly a case. I think he has the second best case on this list with Jordan Love. I don't know what to think of Sam Howell. I just don't. Like, it makes for bad podcasting comment. Like, it'd be better if I was like, who sucks? Sam Howell. I don't know. Like, I think it's bad that he was a day 3 pick. I don't think that bodes well for him. The fact that the league thought this guy stinks. But Scary Terry, Curtis Samuel, Jahan Dotson, like, they have weapons on this offense that if, he can just be fine, they can be pretty good. Now, the Justin Fields of it all, I don't even want to get that far down this line, but remember what I said about total EPA. Justin Fields started more games than anyone else on this list, I believe. No, Mac Jones, I guess. And Jordan Love still created more EPA than Justin Fields. The case for Justin Fields is, look, he is one of the greatest scrambling quarterbacks we've ever seen. So if the passing game, you just pick that up a little bit, that'll be great. If the first part is true, then we have to accept just how bad he was as a thrower, just how bad he was as a passer. To come up with a negative total EPA in a year where you are historically good running the football. 8 rushing touchdowns, multiple huge games and plays running the ball. A statistical all-time great running season. But it is paired with one of the worst year 2 starter passing seasons in modern history. I just don't know why an additional guard and another receiver, albeit a good receiver in DJ Moore, is really going to change his performance all that much. That brings us to Jordan Love. Jordan Love walks into an offense that we've seen schematically work. Now, Aaron Rodgers, I understand that. We're going to talk about some of the scheme nuances in a second with Aaron Rodgers and this offense. But we know wide zone, play action, bootleg, RPO, that stuff works. San Francisco, LA, Cleveland, we've seen it work. And the Packers, skill position players, like if Jair Alexander is raving about Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs, take notice. You bring in Luke Musgrave and Tucker Kraft. You have this great running game, this great offensive line, and a really good offensive coach. I think you look around at this list and you go, the best offensive coaches are Lance, Ritter, and Love, because you've got Shanahan, Arthur Smith, and Matt LaFleur. Not a coincidence, by the way. The Falcons have good weapons with Drake London and Kyle Pitts, and they bring in Bijan Robinson, which made it a little weird to me, but okay. In a bad division, Ritter is an interesting name here too. And what is also interesting is the Packers play a number of these teams. They have to play Kenny Pickett. So Jordan Love is going to get a chance to go, hey, I'm better than you. Jordan Love is more talented than Kenny Pickett, but with George Pickens, Deontay Johnson, a pretty good offensive line. They just added Broderick Jones, Najee Harris, Pat Freiermuth. Now, their offensive coordinator I have questions about, that's for sure. The offensive structure I have questions about. But there's talent there. I think Jordan Love is the best candidate of this group. The Green Bay infrastructure, the coach, and then the pure talent that Jordan Love possesses. He is the guy I think is most likely to break out. And I love this data deep dive because it tells me that this can happen. This does happen. This has happened. This has been happening. There is someone like this. And of the list of guys who are in that second through fourth seasons, that's the cohort of players that we're talking about here. Love is the guy I think stands out, frankly, as being the one most likely to come through in this way. All right, we're going to get to a little bit more on why that is in just a second. But before we do, today's episode brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Make your way to FanDuel because right now new customers get a no sweat first bet up to $2,500, $2,500 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. This is a great opportunity to get in on baseball. Baseball, the beauty of betting on baseball is tonight there's a game. And win or lose, tomorrow there's a game. And win or lose, the next day there's a game. And maybe, if you're lucky, win or lose, the next day there's a game. Getaway days, all that stuff. But you have so many opportunities to put your money where your mouth is. And for FanDuel to say, yeah, here, take some back. And there's no better place to do all of that gambling than at America's #1 sportsbook. Go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to get a no sweat first bet up to $2,500. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. And thanks for everyone who makes Locked On Packers their first listen every day. Every dayers. More to come from OTAs this week. Not something we're going to talk about a ton on the show today, but I promise you that is coming. Impressions from the mandatory mini camp, which was this week. All of that coming up. There was this great interview with George Kittle from our pal Kevin Clark over on Slow News Day at The Ringer, friend of the show, been on the show. And what George Kittle said got football Twitter worked up a little bit. And it was that he said Kyle Shanahan will call plays, run plays he knows will not work to set up play action later. Ted Wynn over at The Athletic echoed this. He said Mike McDaniel told him a similar thing, that when he and Mike Shanahan were with the Falcons, and when they played a team that they were overmatched, they would call runs they knew would likely not work. Now, runs that were less likely to have major issues, safe runs, inside zone, duo, these kinds of quick hitting runs, just to keep the defense a little off balance, that you can't just sit there and throw it 50 times because the defense can get attuned to that. Who else was on that staff? Matt LaFleur. Matt LaFleur was the quarterback coach on that staff. Now think back to late stage Mike McCarthy. It felt like they were calling plays, not running an offense. This is something we talked often about, everydayers from back in the day. Back in the dayers from 2018, will remember this as a discussion point. It no longer felt like an offense. And this was a little bit the case in 2019 as well, when there was this give and take, this push-pull between Aaron Rodgers and Matt LaFleur. It didn't feel cohesive. You didn't call a play to set up the next play. In 2020 was the best version of this because we saw so many times, okay, you're going to run mesh 5 times, and on 3rd and 4, when you need to have it, you're going to run this mesh return route where they're expecting mesh, and you're going to get that crosser to spin back outside, and all of a sudden, you've got a wide open receiver for a first down. 2020, and even parts of 2019, when you didn't have Devontae Adams, so much schematically done to make this all work. Where it was maybe not plays that were burned, but plays that you would call knowing you want to set up this thing later. And you'd hear Matt LaFleur, especially last year, talk about this. Hey, we had a lot of these concepts we really liked that we couldn't get to because. And the because was because they didn't have the ball enough. They couldn't sustain drives. You couldn't get the run game, a couple runs, and then you come to the play action off of that. Well, if all of a sudden you're losing because your offense is not matriculating up and down the field and able to score points in the red zone, you're settling for field goals, you're not getting the 4th downs you're going for, you can't get to the play off the play. Well, this Matt LaFleur offense is built on the idea of the play off the play. So I expect that to be different this year. With Jordan Love, you just run the offense. And I know Matt LaFleur demurred when he was asked about well, now you can run the offense you want. He's like, well, it's always been the offense I want. I've been in the building. It's Aaron Rodgers. It's the offense we want. It's not my offense. It's our offense. And that's a great coach answer. But look, Matt LaFleur knows exactly what we're talking about. And it's going to be different this year. He is going to get to call the offense he wants to call, or at least a more Matt LaFleur driven version of the offense. He may be hamstrung by Jordan Love, by young receivers, by, if there's injuries to the offensive line, if teams play them a certain kind of way that he either doesn't like or wasn't expecting. Those factors are all in play and are important here when we're talking about what this offense is going to look like. But it raises the question, why didn't it look like that always the last few years? And this is something that, Dusty Evely came on this show and talked to me about. And it's something that he mentions all the time. And the turn of phrase is great. He uses it all the time. And don't let great be the enemy of the good. Trying to get into the perfect play every time pre-snap can lead to some of these rhythmic problems where there isn't this same, not just rhythm, but cohesion of offense. Play to play, drive to drive, game to game. Because when you're Aaron Rodgers, you can look at a defense and go, I think the best defense for this play is called. And so I'm going to change the play to a better play, or I'm going to adjust a route here. And that makes it harder when you call the concept and you have a play off the concept. It makes it harder to get to the play off the concept if you've changed the concept, tweaked the concept, or not run the concept at all. Now, presumably, Aaron Rodgers knows the plays off the play. And so if you're going to run outside zone at its core, and now you have a play off an outside zone, a reverse boot off outside zone, and you've got a play action shot play. A lot of the Packers offense, a lot of the Shanahan tree offense is based on outside zone play action or split zone play action. So if you have all these pre-snap RPO looks and you're not running those runs, it's harder to get to those play actions. And play action is a great way to generate offense. Sometimes, and we talked about this last year, you don't have to be a long-time everydayer to remember last year talking about on the show wanting to call more run-it runs, where it's just like, no matter what the front is doing, no matter what is happening, just run the play. Just run it. And yes, if you have an opportunity at a kill shot, chunk play, hit that play action and go for it. But otherwise, just run it. Because that dead play, that play when you call it is probably not going to work, can set up the play down the line. Now, again, when Rodgers is audibling out of these or making checks or adjustments, and I'm not necessarily laying blame at the feet of Aaron Rodgers, because there have been so many times over the years where big plays in big moments have been drawn up in the dirt by Aaron Rodgers. What I'm saying is, I think this offense will not have to rely on that, because when you do rely on that, you have to be right so much. You have to be perfect every time. And if you're not, if this receiver's gait is a little bit off, if the steps or the timing are a little bit off, you're boned, because sometimes getting into that perfect play also requires perfect execution. Whereas if you call the play that probably won't work, so that you can run the play later, that if you've run the play that didn't work 4 or 5 times, all of a sudden is a touchdown, there's a lot of value in that. And my assumption here is, and maybe it's a faulty one, but my assumption is that Matt LaFleur is going to be more willing to call the plays that he knows have a lower percentage chance of working, because those are the plays they want to come to with the illusion of complexity. They want to get to the play off the play. Oh, you've seen this play 4 times, 5 times, bang. Here's the play off the play. Oh, you've been watching film, the old Cam Newton? Watch this. And you come to the backside of that route, or you come to the play action, or you give the jet motion when they've seen that jet split zone run a million times and they stop respecting the jet. That's when you give the jet, or that's when you do something funky. I think we're going to see a little bit more of that funkiness and a little bit more of that deliberate play calling. And Jordan Love, I think, more likely to keep them in those plays. I don't think he's going to have the sort of free reign at the line of scrimmage that Aaron Rodgers does, though we're hearing from OTAs and mandatory mini camps that the cadence is really working, that the hard count is getting nice. Not quite Aaron Rodgers level, but it's getting there. It's getting there. So I wanted to flag this, because there may be times when you're going, another 2nd and 8 run. Okay. But then in the 4th quarter or the 3rd quarter, does it set up the big play? The best example I can give you of this is the Rams playoff game. The Packers stayed so patient in that game. And they're running. The Rams sit in that too high look. They're running. They're getting some underneath passes, but for the most part, the run game is working. They break off that big run play with Aaron Jones, and they have the lead. Now they have a chance to salt this game away. And what are the Rams expecting them to do? Run the ball. And what do? Play action, Allen Lazard, touchdown, and it's game blouses. I think that was going to be the approach more. Now that requires the defense to be up to the task of giving the Packers the chance to get a lead and hold a lead, so that you can be in position to make those sorts of calls. All right, we're going to finish up here, but before we do, thanks to everyone who makes Locked On Packers their first listen every day. We hope you like starting your day with us as much as we like starting our day with you. Go subscribe to The Leap, a newsletter I would love for you to subscribe to, with our new partners over at Underdog Fantasy. I wrote about this idea of blood in the water, which we talked about yesterday. And I think there's good stuff happening on this newsletter. Jason Hirschhorn, my colleague, America's guest, also does a great job. He has a piece coming out on Friday, and we're gonna be back here to 5 days a week coming up very, very soon. Also, check out Locked On Sports Today. All the sports stories you need in under 20 minutes with our Locked On hosts, the best local angles you could ask for. We have them here on the Locked On Podcast Network. As other companies slash local coverage, we are here giving you the local coverage everywhere. It's what we do. It is our raison d'etre. It is what we exist to give you. So come enjoy the best that there is to offer, frankly, from the local beats from around the sports world in the U.S. with Locked On Sports Today. One more thing that I want to bring up here as we close out the podcast. Mandatory minicamp is over. Just a name I want to bring up, Malik Heath. Malik Heath is a name that you may think I made up. I promise I did not make it up. Undrafted free agent, and he has seemingly made a play a day from Ole Miss and Mississippi State, actually. And he has made some plays. Was getting some run with the ones this week in mandatory minicamp. Has the size that the Packers covet, 6'2", 213. 40-yard dash, not bad. Not bad. 4.54, it's not bad. And we know this is an important thing. That three cone, 6.96. That sub 7 three cone at 6'2", 213. That is a really, really nice number. The Ole Miss receiver everyone wanted in this draft, who, by the way, I thought went way too high, and everyone was like, oh, could be a first-round pick. Yes, he would have certainly fit the bill at the thresholds that the Packers tend to like. But the Packers were not in position to take him. And, that's neither here nor there. Jonathan Mingo could end up being a nice player. But this is the guy who produced. This is the guy who actually produced in 2022. 60 catches, almost 1,000 yards, and 5 touchdowns. This was the guy. And there were times when I watched on tape and I was like, that guy's better. So it's an interesting name to keep an eye on. I did not anticipate saying that, but here we are. He's making plays in camp. So just keep an eye on that as we get into training camp. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter, Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts. Wherever you find podcasts, you will find Locked On Packers, the #1 Packers podcast on the internet. And the show for fans who know what happened. They want to know why and how. That's what we're here for, baby. Anytime you want to come hang out with us live, you can do that on our YouTube page, Locked On Packers on YouTube, so you can stay Locked On Packers.